Hi everyone, and welcome to both the video and the channel. Today I'm going to be comparing a few points between what it's like having a job, owning a business or being self-employed, and earning passive income. Now my purpose for this video is to help people make more informed decisions in determining how they want to earn money and how they want to put that money to use. So if you find any value from this video, it would be much appreciated if you would leave a like or subscribe. I plan on doing more content like this very soon. So if that stuff interests you, then stick around for that. And without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing on my list here is that time equals money when you have a job. So that's exactly how it sounds. When you have a job, the amount of money that you make is directly linked to the amount of time that you put in. So say your work day is 8 hours long. Well, during that day, you can only make the amount of money you can get paid in 8 hours. So say your wage is $10 an hour. Well, on that day, you're making $80, right? So you can repeat that over time and say, calculate the amount of money that you can make in a week or a month or a year, and then that brings us to the next concept, which is a ceiling. So when you have a job, there is a ceiling, if you will, or a limit on the amount of money that you can make. Since the amount of money you make is directly linked to your time, and you can only work a certain amount of hours within, say, a day, or you can stretch it out to your entire career even. Since there's a limit on the amount of time you're able to be there working, there's a limit on the amount of money that you're able to earn. So that's why we call that a ceiling, and that is why having a job puts a limit on the amount of money that you can earn throughout your entire career. And you can kind of calculate that by looking at, either your current job, if that's what you're sticking with. You can kind of calculate out how much money you'll earn by the end of your career to kind of calculate your maximum. And you can also look at, if you're looking to get promoted or work your way up within an industry, you can look at what the people in the positions that you want to be in, what they earn, and you can calculate out what you'll be earning throughout your career. So we'll move right on. We kind of talked about this first grouping here underneath the job section, so we'll kind of go across this board in this way. So next we'll talk about being a business owner or being self-employed, and how your time is related to money. So what I said is that your time is somewhat related to money when you own a business or are self-employed. And what I mean by that is there's kind of a spectrum here. So on one end of the spectrum, you're putting in, say we'll go with that same 8 hours that the person with the job has over here. If you own a business and you put in 8 hours of work, it's possible that you will make way more money than someone with a job. And it's possible that you may not even need to put in that 8 hours, and you kind of just sit back and your business is running itself, and that you're making money that way. And in that sense, your time would not really be linked to the amount of money that you're making. But on the other end of the spectrum, if you're, say, the only person in your business, or you're self-employed, if you're a sole proprietor, well, in that case, the amount of time you're putting in is more, linked to the amount of money that you're going to make, because you're either doing customer acquisition, or even, especially if you're providing a service and you're the only person providing that service, well, then the amount of time that you're putting in is linked to the amount of money that you're getting out. But if you own a business or are self-employed, well, there's the option to expand that out, hire other employees, so that the amount of money that you're generating isn't necessarily linked to your time, but you're drawing out the amount of time put in by your task force, if you will, your employees as a whole. So that that's why I put It's somewhat linked because it really does depend on how you have things set up within your business, you know, how things are set up there for you. And, you know, even looking kind of beyond what I just mentioned there, with being self-employed, a lot of people say that their time is directly linked to the amount of money that they're making, since they're charging for, say, video editing service. That's what we'll go with for an example here. If you edit videos for a living and you charge $30 per hour, well, a lot of people would say the amount of money that you make is directly linked to the amount of time you're putting in, you know, because just like having a job, those things would be matched there. Well, you know, there in that case, it appears as though the amount of time you're putting in is linked to the amount of money that you take out, but you do have to factor in other time that you're putting in. You know, not to say that they aren't linked, but I'm saying that the link, you need to factor in the total amount of time that you're putting in, because there's other factors like customer acquisition, like I was talking about. So if you're spending 2 hours editing a video and you make $60 from doing that, but you're spending, you know, 5 hours over here just getting that one customer to do things, well then, you know, you may be making a lot less money than you would if you had the job. So that's kind of a point I wanted to make there. But let's move on to the no ceiling, no floor concept with running a business or being self-employed. So when you run a business or are self-employed, there is no ceiling and no floor, meaning that there is really no limit to the amount of money that you can make, you know, in these circumstances. So as I said, you can, you know, on one end there's being in that role where things are kind of set up, you're sitting back watching things go, and, you know, you're growing your team and they're doing work, you know, you're selling more products, or you have more people doing your service for you. Well, in that case, you're growing and there's, you know, there's no limit on the amount that you can expand or sell. So in that sense, there is no real ceiling on the amount of profit or money that you're able to earn, you know, while running a business or being self-employed throughout your career. But at the same time, there's no floor. And what I mean by that is, you know, when you have a job, you have a guaranteed amount of money that you're going to make per hour. You know, your wage is set, so you're not going to make more than you're supposed to make, but you're not going to make any less as well. But if you own a business or are self-employed, there is no floor. So you may be putting in 8 hours of work once again, but you could be making no money, right? So if you don't have any clients, you're not selling to anyone, well then all your efforts are in vain and that time is wasted. You're not making any money. So really, we'll kind of get to this later, is that, you know, this ties into your lifestyle with, it's a lifestyle choice between these two options here of, you know, here there is no real limit on the amount that you can grow, but there's no guarantee that you'll even get to the point of making as much as you would at a job. So it's kind of a risk versus reward factor there. So it really depends how you have things set up. So that is something to consider when comparing these two here. But with that being said, we'll move on to passive income. So in passive income, the amount of time you put in is not linked to the amount of money that you make. So the way that works is, generally with passive income, you will spend a large amount of time setting things up initially. So for this one, in this column here, we'll stick with the example of owning a rental property. All right. So let's say that you buy a rental property and you spend, you know, a year fixing it up. So that'll be, we can consider that your initial time to get things set up is buying this property, fixing it up, finding a good tenant, filling out all the paperwork, maybe maybe even getting a property manager so that the whole thing kind of runs itself. You know, so we'll you know we'll consider that the initial time you put in to have it set up, but after that, once it is set up, it's running itself, and you kind of sit back, and from there on out, you're just making money every month, and you're sitting back, and your time is not linked to the amount of money that you're making from that point forward, right? So now the next point I'll make has to do with there not being a ceiling. So what I mean by that is, so say you got that rental property set up, let's make the example of you're making $1,000 a month from this rental property. So from now on, you have $1,000 extra a month that you're bringing in, and you're able then to use that money. You're saving up faster now to buy your next rental property. So let's say you buy it, you get that one set up, you spend a year, but you get it set up, and from that point on, you're making $2,000 extra per month. Well then, you're saving up even faster now, so the time it takes for you to buy your third rental property, it'll come even quicker. What I'm saying here is that you can repeat the model that you use to set up your passive income sources. You can repeat that model over and over, and there's no ceiling on the amount of times, there's no limit on the amount of times that you're able to repeat that and to continuously and essentially infinitely grow the amount of streams that you have coming in of that income. So there's no limit on the amount of money that you can make during your quote-unquote career of building passive income. So I think I covered everything there in that first kind of cross-section. So now we'll get into, as I was saying, more of that lifestyle stuff. So we're going to talk about flexibility here. So at a job, I put that there's not much flexibility. And when I'm talking about flexibility, I'm referring to your ability to kind of make on-the-call decisions of if you want to attend a social gathering or not, or if you want to take a vacation or not. If you need to take time off, or if you just want to get away for some time on the fly, that kind of freedom to do as you wish, and not be tied down with either being too tired to do something or not having the time to do something. So with the job, it's very much not flexible in that sense, generally speaking. Some jobs allow you to be very flexible with this kind of thing, but generally speaking, I think your average job is not very flexible with that stuff. So that's a lifestyle thing to consider with that. But moving on to if you own a business or are self-employed, I put flexibility as a question mark, because once again, we talked about that spectrum of how you have things set up. It'll really depend on where you're at on that spectrum, right? So on one end, if you've got the whole business set up and it's running itself, you really don't have to do much work at all. It's just kind of there, and you're sitting back watching it go. Well, in that case, then it's extremely flexible with what you're able to do with your time. You can do whatever you want really with that. But on the other end of the spectrum, well, you could be, really putting in all this time, not really seeing much result, but you're really going all in. You're putting in, these massive work days, and you're not really able to do much in terms of social stuff or taking vacations, because you're really putting all your time into growing the business, into setting everything up with it. And that's generally how it is with, a business or being self-employed, is that you're really putting in a lot of time, to try and get it set up to the point to move yourself onto the other end of the spectrum where you're sitting back. But it does take a lot of effort, and it's not guaranteed that you'll make it all the way to the other end. So that's another thing with that risk factor I was talking about. That's a choice that you want to make if you want to take that risk and either see yourself move all the way to the one end of the spectrum and be free, I guess you could call it, of being flexible with what you're able to do, or it's not guaranteed that you'll make it though, so there is a risk associated with that. So that's something that you have to consider when making a decision between if you want a job or to be self-employed / own a business. Yeah. All right. So next up on the list is passive income in terms of flexibility. And with that, I said that is very flexible. So by that, I'm talking about, you've got this rental property set up, you're getting money every single month, you're repeating the process, and you're able to, say you had a job before, and that's how you were initially getting the capital to set up this rental property, and you're eventually able to retire from that job way before you would normally retire from it, and now you're kind of sitting back in that passive income, as I said, when you're able to repeat the process faster and faster. Well, if you're growing that, the amount of income that you're bringing in every month, well, then it's kind of a snowball effect where you're able to repeat the process faster and faster, do it on a bigger and bigger scale. So in that sense, you've got, it's kind of just going now, and you'll be very flexible with your time. You can decide which projects you want to take on, decide when you want to work, what you want to hire out for those projects, if you want to do the work yourself or pay someone else to do it. So you're very flexible in your decision making on that end. So last but not least, we're going to talk about assets that you are left with at the end. So for a job, you will have no assets unless you're working some job I haven't heard about. You're not going to have any assets by the end of working it. That's not to say that, as you're working a job, you can't use the money that you earn from it to buy assets. That's a completely different thing. What I mean is that the job itself is not directly giving you an asset. You're not working towards something. You're not, your job isn't, directly going to pay for a house. You're not making house payments directly with your job. You can choose to do that, but that's not what your job is. So having a job will really depend on how you spend that money there, but the job itself will not leave you with any assets. Owning a business or being self-employed, well, that I put possible assets, right? So by that I mean that it's possible that you can be working towards an asset while owning a business. For example, you could have an ice cream store, right? And your ice cream store, it's got a physical location, a physical shop, and as you're running the business and everything, you're paying off, you're actually buying that property there, and after a few years you own that property, you own the location that your business is in, and that becomes a physical asset. So that would definitely be considered working towards an asset in that sense. But on the other end, with our video editor over here, unless they expand out to do something, and I'm not sure what a video editor could do. I'm trying to think of an example of something that they could be working towards while editing a video that would be considered an asset, directly working towards something. Maybe a editing studio, or working towards something like that. There's something that you could be working towards if you're a video editor who's self-employed, but let's just assume it's your basic video editor who's maybe got a few other people hired out and they're all just doing it remotely. Well, in that case, they are not working towards any assets in that sense. So by the end of their careers, they will, unless they take that money once again and buy an asset directly, well, they're not straight up working towards an asset, and by the end, they will not be left with any from their job. So then we talk about passive income is the only one that's guaranteed that you will have an asset, and that's because generally speaking, the asset is what is giving you passive income, because that's how it works. So, with passive income, we'll take our rental property example. Well, by the end of you fixing it up, renting it out, and getting it set up, well, then that itself is an asset that you can use. If you're renting it out and you've got a mortgage payment on that thing, well, then you can use the rent that you're earning to pay that mortgage payment, and you're working towards that you're paying off the mortgage payment and you're acquiring that asset more and more, and that's how it works. And even as you're paying off that mortgage payment, the house itself is still an asset. It's set up, it's paying you every single month, so that in itself is an asset, and those are the points of comparison that I have written down on here for these 3 different ways of making money. I know that I could have brought up a couple other comparison points, but I thought about things that I'm not really an expert in everything. I could have brought up taxes, how you can with a job there's one way of you're doing your taxes. With a business, you're doing write-offs, stuff like that. Passive income, there's a different way to you can not, I wouldn't say work around, but kind of you're not paying as much tax, or you're decreasing your tax load, I'd say. So I could have brought up that stuff, but I'm not really an expert in that stuff. So for any of those topics, do feel free, if you guys think of anything else, to drop it in the comments below. If you think I should address anything else, or if anyone is an expert in anything, then feel free to comment below as well. But for you, I'd say that hopefully this guide helped you be more informed about each of these ways of making money, and kind of the lifestyle, and how it works, like how everything associated with each of these comes into play to help you make better decisions in determining which ones you want to take on. Maybe you want to combine some, have a job in order to create passive income, own a business in order to create passive income, own a business to get to the other end of the spectrum and sit back. Really it's up to you on how you want to do this, but I really do hope that this informed you. And if it did, then once again, feel free to leave a like or subscribe. I do plan on doing more videos like this in the future. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.